world's most powerful economies gathering, not in New York, not in London, but on African soil, in Johannesburg. That's what happened at the 2025 G20 summit, the first ever G20 on the African continent. And at the center of it all was Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, turning the spotlight not just on India but on Africa and the global south. The G20 summit in South Africa wasn't just another diplomatic gathering or glitzy showcase. From seismic policy reforms tackling global inequality and debt, Johannesburg saw both business and buzz on a scale rarely witnessed. Hi, I'm Richa Devedi, and today we will discuss the full spectrum, from the reforms reshaping Africa's future to the global influencer energy that made headlines. The 2025 G20 Johannesburg Summit is the first G20 summit to be held in Africa. The event carried the theme Solidarity, Equality, Sustainability, signaling an emphasis on inclusive development, climate justice, debt relief, equitable global governance, and support for developing economies. This summit was also a milestone in multilateral diplomacy. Under India's previous G20 presidency, the African Union gained permanent membership at the G20 table, a move that finally gave Africa a formal voice in global economic governance. This summit marked a symbolic shift. Global power and global discussion were not only about traditional Western capitals, but about Africa leading from its continent. At the heart of South Africa's G20 presidency was a commitment to make global governance genuinely inclusive and effective. The summit's most significant outcomes centered on four key policy pillars. Recognizing that more than half of African countries are in or facing high debt distress, leaders agreed on urgent measures to make international debt relief frameworks more responsive, just, and transparent. The G20 committed to realignment in quota shares that better reflect global realities while protecting the poorest. South Africa mobilized agreement to boost climate finance flows and leverage critical minerals for sustainable development. Concrete pledges included support for connecting 300 million Africans to electricity by 2030 and advancing the Just Energy Transition Partnership to help nations shift toward renewables. For the first time, the G20 formally agreed on industrial policy interventions, empowering developing countries to pursue targeted growth in key industries. This overturned years of taboo against such government-led strategies, giving poorer nations much-needed flexibility to catalyze jobs and local wealth. A dedicated task force addressed global food insecurity, proposing strategic buffer stock systems to curb volatile food prices and building shared resilience against climate-induced disasters. These weren't vague promises. They reflected urgent and coordinated action fueled by strong advocacy from Africa's first-ever G20 host and supported by many Global South partners. From the moment Prime Minister Modi landed in Johannesburg to the closing session, he projected a strong message. Global cooperation rooted in the ancient Indian philosophy of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, which means one earth, one family, one future. Prime Minister Modi's address brought even more concrete proposals into play with his six-point agenda. A G20 initiative to counter the drug terror nexus. A G20 global healthcare response team, a ready-to-deploy cadre of medical professionals for future crises. A G20 Africa Skills Multiplier initiative aimed at building a skilled workforce across Africa. A global traditional knowledge repository to safeguard and share indigenous knowledge globally. A G20 open satellite data partnership promoting space cooperation and transparency for development and disaster management. A critical minerals circulatory initiative, emphasizing sustainable mineral sourcing and value addition, especially relevant for Africa. On emerging technologies, Prime Minister Modi called for a global compact on AI advocating human-centric, transparent, accountable AI systems. He stressed that while AI holds promise, its governance must be rooted in ethics, not exploitation. On global governance, in a sideline session at the trilateral IPSA Dialogue Forum, he called for reforms to the United Nations Security Council, urging the Global South to get a say in global decision-making. In short, Prime Minister Modi turned what could have been a host and attend visit into a full-fledged solutions-oriented leadership role for the Global South. Leaders at the summit, including host Cyril Ramaphosa, credited India, Brazil and Indonesia for laying the foundations of this successful G20 presidency for South Africa, highlighting how the Global South is asserting its voice. Despite absences, including major economies because of boycott or divergent priorities, the leaders adopted a 122-point declaration that addressed food security, debt relief, energy transition, climate justice, inequality, global governance reform, and inclusive development. Many African policy analysts and diplomats hailed the summit as a signal that Africa is no longer a bystander, but a decision-making center in global affairs, thanks in part to the political will and diplomatic push that India embodied. South Africans praised Prime Minister Modi's rapid-fire updates and constant engagement, calling him the undisputed social media king, likening him to cultural icons who effortlessly dominate public attention. Many joked they would miss his posts once the summit ended, with spontaneous thanks for making South Africa and Africa at large the world's focal point. This isn't just internet chatter. It shows how a leader's real-time engagement and narrative control can amplify a country's diplomacy. For many South Africans, the summit was transformed from a diplomatic event into a shared global moment, and they loved being part of it. It wasn't a damp summit overshadowed by absences or controversies. Instead, it turned out to be energizing, inclusive, and forward-looking. Global South's voice is rising. The fact that Africa hosts the G20 and that its concerns were taken seriously marks a shift in global governance. Through the African Union's G20 inclusion and engaging, proposal-rich diplomacy in Johannesburg, India showed it aims to be a leader, not just a participant. From AI governance and health emergency response teams to skills initiatives for Africa and sustainable mining approaches, this summit delivered a roadmap, not just buzzwords. The G20 summit this year made history by prioritizing reforms that matter to Africa and the developing world. If the world needed a reminder that we are one family, one earth, one future, Johannesburg delivered it. So that was all on G20. If you found this video insightful, do let me know your thoughts in the comments below.